Welcome to our deep dive. And today we're going somewhere I think a lot of people might have already been. We're going into 1984 by George Orwell.
Yeah.
And we're not doing a book report.
Right.
We're really trying to get into like what makes this book tick.
Sure.
And why it's so relevant, I think, especially like in this post-COVID world and all the stuff that that brought up.
It's fascinating how this book, written decades ago, really seems to tap into some anxieties that we have in our current moment. Anxieties about censorship and anxieties about technology and surveillance.
Right.
And Orwell just drops us right into this world.
Yeah.
Oceania, this totalitarian state where Big Brother's gaze is inescapable and where even thinking the wrong thing can be a crime.
Oh, yeah. You get that sense right away.
Yes.
Remember like that hallway Winston walks through?
Yes.
With the giant poster of Big Brother and the telescreens everywhere?
It creates this atmosphere of surveillance.
Oh, yeah.
Where privacy is essentially non-existent and where self-censorship becomes almost second nature.
Totally. And that's not even like his apartment, like where he lives.
Right.
It's the same way.
Well, his flat with that two-way telescreen constantly blaring propaganda.
Right.
That represents the party's total control over information and the chilling effect that has on individual thought.
It's like you can't get away from it.
Right.
And it's not even just that you're being watched. It's like the fear of even thinking something rebellious.
Absolutely.
Remember that scene where he writes in his diary, down with Big Brother?
Yes.
Like that in his diary? And he's like so panicked?
Right. And it's completely disproportionate to the actual risk.
Yes.
But that's what makes it so powerful.
Yeah.
Because it highlights the insidious nature of thought crime.
Right.
It's not the act itself. It's that seed of rebellion that the party seeks to crush before it can even sprout.
So how do they do it? Like, how do they maintain this, like, suffocating level of control?
Well, they don't just rely on brute force.
Right.
Orwell gives us a chillingly nuanced look at these mechanisms of totalitarian control.
Okay.
You know, take Newspeak, for example.
Okay.
It's not just a simplified language.
Right.
It's designed to reshape thought by eliminating words that express concepts like freedom, individuality, critical thinking.
So by like shrinking the language.
Yes.
They're like shrinking what people can conceive of.
Exactly. It's linguistic engineering at its most sinister.
That's messed up.
Yeah. And then you've got doublethink, this ability to hold two contradictory beliefs simultaneously,
like
without batting an eye. War is peace. Freedom is slavery.
Yeah.
Ignorance is strength.
Okay. Those are terrifyingly catchy.
Right.
But how does it actually like work?
Right. How can people believe things that are so obviously false?
Yeah.
Well, think about the Ministry of Truth, where Winston works. It's this massive organization dedicated to constantly rewriting history.
Right.
Altering records, fabricating news to fit the party's ever-shifting agenda.
It's like they're creating this world where truth is whatever they say it is.
That's exactly it.
And if you remember differently, you're a thought criminal.
Right. The party doesn't just want obedience. They want complete control over reality itself.
And what gets me is how internalized it all is. Like Winston is constantly worried he's going to like betray himself.
Right.
With like a stray thought or a facial expression or, just
a flicker of doubt.
Yeah.
And this is where Orwell's genius really shines through. Because he understands that true totalitarian control isn't just about external force. It's about shaping the inner landscape of the individual, making self-censorship an automatic reflex.
It's like living in a state of paranoia.
Perpetual paranoia. Yeah. And that's before we even get to the actual torture and brainwashing that goes on in the Ministry of Love.
The Ministry of Love.
Ministry of Love. It's ironic, isn't it? Yeah. It's anything but loving.
Right.
It's where the party's control becomes inescapable, where individuals are broken down and remade in the image of Big Brother.
It's described as this like really imposing windowless fortress.
Yes, surrounded by barbed wire hidden machine guns.
Yeah.
Even the architecture is designed to intimidate.
And it's there in this oppressive atmosphere. That we see Winston kind of wanting something more.
Yes.
And I think that leads to his rebellion.
It's his search for truth and connection in the face of this dehumanizing system.
And it starts with these small acts of defiance, right?
Right.
The diary writing.
Yes.
His attraction to Julia, their affair.
Yes, it's almost like these moments of human connection are his only weapon against the party's ideology.
But it doesn't end well.
No.
Like, their rebellion is totally crushed.
Their arrest in Mr. Charrington's room.
Yeah.
The shattering of the paperweight.
Right.
Their descent into the nightmare of the Ministry of Love.
Yeah.
It's a pretty devastating downfall.
Yeah, the paperweight, I thought that was really interesting.
Oh, it's a brilliant symbol.
Yeah.
It represents the fragility of their hope,
Right.
the illusion of safety they'd created within a system designed to crush any glimmer of individuality.
And then there's O'Brien.
Yes.
In the Ministry of Love.
Yeah.
Winston's encounter with O'Brien.
Yeah. It's like looking into the eyes of the party.
Yeah.
This like chilling figure.
The embodiment of absolute power and control.
It was not like a dumb brute.
No, he's intelligent, articulate, and utterly ruthless.
Yeah. And when he explains, like, why the party does what it does.
Yeah. What are they after?
It's so chilling. What's the goal?
Like, it's not about ideology.
Right.
Or helping people.
It's not for the good of others.
It's just power.
It's about power for power's sake.
Yeah.
And that's a warning. I think that's still relevant today.
Totally.
Especially in a world where we've seen how truth can be manipulated, how narratives can be controlled,
right,
and how those in power can use fear and division to maintain their grip.
Yeah, so what is this all, like, what does Winston's rebellion, his downfall, teach us about power and control?
What can we learn from this?
Like, is there any hope?
Yeah, is there any hope for individual resistance?
In the face of this overwhelming force?
That's a question I think we'll explore further in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay.
But I think one crucial takeaway is that even in the darkest of times, the human spirit yearns for freedom, for truth, for connection.
Right.
And those yearnings, however fleeting, can be a powerful form of resistance in themselves.
It's like even in this bleak world, there's these flickers of hope.
There are these flickers of hope, these moments of defiance that remind us that the human spirit can't be entirely extinguished.
Yeah. Okay, that's a lot. It's a lot to unpack.
Yeah. So we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be right back.
Welcome back. So we're kind of getting into some heavy stuff here. And I think it's time to maybe shift gears a little bit.
Okay.
And talk about the parallels between Orwell's 1984 in our own world.
Okay.
Especially in this post-COVID era.
Yeah, it's hard not to see those similarities. Like, if we have all this crazy technology now that I don't think Orwell could have imagined.
Right.
Like smartphones tracking us everywhere.
Yeah, facial recognition software.
Like, right, and like algorithms that are trying to
predict our
thoughts. It's wild.
Yeah, it's almost like the telescreens from Oceania are suddenly everywhere.
Yeah.
The technology might be different.
But that underlying principle of constant surveillance, of Big Brother watching, is strikingly familiar.
It is. And, you know, it's not just the watching either.
Right.
Like, remember how the party controlled the narrative?
Yes.
They rewrote history.
Right.
They manipulated information.
They decided what was true.
It feels like that's happening today.
In a way, yes, with the spread of misinformation and the rise of censorship.
Yeah, like there's certain topics you're not allowed to talk about.
Right. Certain things are off limits.
And if you do, you're labeled as spreading fake news or whatever.
Exactly. It's a subtle but powerful form of thought control.
Yeah. But who decides what's true?
Right. That's the question, isn't it?
What happens when, like, the people in power are the ones controlling the information?
That's the million-dollar question, and it's a question that Orwell forces us to confront.
Yeah.
I mean, the Ministry of Truth in 1984 is a chilling reminder of how easily truth can be manipulated.
Yeah, it's like that saying, he who controls the past controls the future.
Exactly, by controlling the flow of information.
Right.
By shaping the narrative, those in power can control how we think.
Totally. And you know what else I was thinking about?
What's that?
The lockdowns. Like during COVID.
Right.
Because it felt like that was such a turning point.
A shift.
Yeah. Like suddenly governments had this power to like restrict our movements, our gatherings,
our access to information.
Yeah. All in the name of safety.
The pandemic became a testing ground in many ways
Yeah.
for new forms of control.
And it's not like it all went away.
No, the infrastructure is still in place.
Exactly. And who's to say they won't use it again?
Right. For different reasons, perhaps.
Exactly. And it's not even just the lockdowns.
Yeah.
It's like we're being trained to accept contradictions.
Like doublethink.
Yeah, like doublethink.
Yeah.
Where we hold these opposing beliefs at the same time.
It's subtle, but it's pervasive. Think about all the conflicting narratives we're bombarded with every day.
Yeah.
The information overload.
Yeah.
The blurring of lines between fact and fiction.
It's like you don't know what to believe anymore.
Right. It creates this climate where critical thinking becomes increasingly difficult.
Right.
And doublethink starts to feel almost normal.
So if Orwell were alive today, what do you think he would say?
I think he'd be both horrified and unsurprised.
Really?
Horrified by how his dystopian vision has come to resemble our reality.
Yeah.
But unsurprised by the human capacity for power and control.
Yeah.
And the willingness of many to surrender their freedoms in exchange for security or comfort.
That's kind of depressing.
It is a bit bleak, but it's important to remember that 1984 is a warning.
Okay.
Not a prophecy.
Okay.
We still have the power to choose a different path.
But how do we do that?
Right? How do we resist these forces that seem so overwhelming? Well, I think 1984 offers some valuable insights, even if it doesn't give us a step-by-step guide to revolution.
Right.
Remember Winston's small acts of rebellion?
Yeah.
Writing in his diary, seeking out connection with Julia.
Yeah.
Those stolen moments of joy and passion. Those were all ways of affirming his humanity.
Okay.
Of refusing to be completely absorbed by the party's ideology.
So, like, those were cracks in the facade.
Yes, cracks in the party's facade.
Okay.
Glimpses of a different reality, a world where individual thought and feeling still mattered.
So that's where the hope lies.
I think so, in those individual acts of courage, of critical thinking, of refusing to conform.
So it starts with awareness.
Yes, awareness of how power operates.
In our own lives.
In our own lives, in our society.
Okay, and then what?
Well, then we need to be willing to speak out.
Even if it makes us uncomfortable.
Especially then, remember Orwell's words, in a time of universal deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act.
Okay, so not just big speeches.
No, it's about those everyday conversations.
Right.
Those moments where we choose to speak truth to power, even in small ways.
Like having those hard conversations.
Yes, exactly.
With family and friends.
Challenging assumptions, refusing to accept the status quo as inevitable.
Okay, what about connection?
Ah, yes.
Like, what about community?
Right. Winston and Julia found strength in their shared defiance.
Right.
In those moments of intimacy and joy.
It's like we need each other.
We can't fight this battle alone.
Right.
We need to find each other to build networks of support.
Okay.
To create spaces where we can share ideas, strategize, and offer each other encouragement.
And those spaces can be like
yes,
online or in person.
Absolutely. We've seen the power of social movements.
Right.
Of people coming together both online and offline to demand change.
Right. So the internet can be a powerful tool.
It can be. But we also need to be mindful of its dangers.
Right. Like the surveillance and censorship.
Exactly. It's about using technology wisely,
right,
strategically.
Without letting it control us.
Exactly. We need to develop those critical media literacy skills to be able to discern truth from falsehood.
So it's like a multi-pronged approach.
It is.
Awareness, education, action, connection.
Yes.
And a healthy dose of skepticism about technology.
Exactly. I think it's important to remember that this fight for freedom is never truly over.
Okay.
It's an ongoing struggle, a constant push and pull between those who seek to control and those who seek to liberate.
So it's a struggle worth fighting.
I believe so, because the alternative, a world where Big Brother reigns supreme, where individual thought and freedom are extinguished, is simply too horrifying to contemplate.
Okay, so we're back, and I don't know about you, but I'm feeling a little overwhelmed.
Understandable.
After all that.
It's pretty heavy stuff.
Yeah, 1984 is a bleak book.
It is.
But it's important to remember it's a warning.
Okay.
Not a prophecy.
Right.
We still have the power to choose a different path.
Okay, but how do we resist all this?
It's a good question.
It seems so overwhelming. It does seem that way sometimes. Yeah. But I think 1984 offers us some insights.
Okay.
Even if it doesn't give us like a step-by-step guide.
Right.
Think about Winston and his little rebellions.
Right, like writing in his diary.
The diary, the connection with Julia, those moments of joy and passion. Yeah. They were all ways of affirming his humanity.
Okay.
Of refusing to let the party completely control him.
So it was like poking holes in their facade.
Cracks in the facade.
Yeah.
Little glimpses of a different reality.
Okay.
A world where individual thought and feeling still mattered.
So that's where we can find hope.
I think so. In those individual acts of courage. Okay. Of critical thinking, of nonconformity.
So it starts with just being aware.
Yes. Awareness of how power operates.
In our own lives.
In our own lives and in the world around us.
Right. And
then we have to be willing to speak up.
Even if it's scary.
Especially then. Remember Orwell said, "In a time of universal deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act."
Oh, wow.
So it's not just about like grand gestures.
Okay.
It's about those everyday conversations. Right. The small moments where we choose to speak truth to power.
But just talking to people.
But exactly. Having those difficult conversations with friends and family.
Right.
Challenging assumptions, questioning the status quo.
What about finding other people?
Yes. Connection community.
Like Winston and Julia had.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We need each other.
Right.
We can't fight this battle alone.
So like finding groups.
Yes. Yeah. Networks of support.
Online or in person?
Both.
Okay.
We've seen the power of social movements.
Right.
People coming together to demand change.
And the internet can help with that.
It can be a powerful tool.
Yeah.
But we also have to be careful.
Right, because of the surveillance and all that.
Exactly. So use technology wisely.
Okay.
Strategically. But don't become dependent on it.
Don't let it control us.
Right. We need to develop those critical media literacy skills.
Right. So we can tell what's true.
Exactly. Discern truth from falsehood. Recognize propaganda.
Okay. So it's like...
It's multifaceted.
Yeah. We need awareness.
Yes.
Education, action, connection.
And a healthy dose of skepticism.
About technology.
About technology, about those in power.
Right. And is that enough?
Well, I think it's important to remember that this fight... Yeah. It never really ends.
Okay.
It's a constant struggle, a push and pull between those who want to control and those who want to be free.
So we have to keep fighting.
I believe so, because the alternative is like a world where Big Brother wins.
Yeah.
Where freedom and individual thought are extinguished.
That's scary.
It's a terrifying thought.
It is.
And that's why we have to resist.
Okay. So what can we leave our listeners with?
Well, 1984 is a warning.
Yeah.
But it's also a call to action.
Okay.
We can choose a different future.
Right.
A future where freedom and truth prevail.
So it starts with us.
It does.
With each of us.
With those small acts of courage, of defiance, of connection.
So don't be afraid to speak up.
Exactly. Don't underestimate the power of your own voice, your own actions, your own willingness to stand up for what you believe in.
That's a good message.
I think so.
Well, thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
Into 1984.
A fascinating and timely discussion.
It really has been. And to all of our listeners out there, stay engaged.
Yes.
Stay informed.
Stay curious.
And never stop questioning.
Never stop questioning.